Hello, I'm Icicle. Welcome to my studio. If you don't know me, I make drum and bass, predominantly some other stuff, dubstep and techno. Signed to Shogun Audio, did a couple of albums with them. Today I'm going to show you a little bit about my workflow and the way I like to work. I am going to do some drums and some bass. I'm going to start with drums, sort of the sound design that I do and the layering and the processing of that quite in detail. And then also some FM8 sort of bassline type design, and also resampling, reusing in Contact. And you know, my general approach really to drums and bass and the sound design and processing that it entails. So I hope you're going to like it. Big up. Okay, so beats is what I'm going to start with. The way I usually make drums is I like to use something like Addictive Drums or maybe Superior Drummer, like a proper hyper-sampled kind of complex sort of drum instrument. And then, you know, just to get that sort of live and organic kind of feel. But at the same time, I want it to be really punchy and loud and weighty and kind of sound more like electronic drums as well. So, you know, just want to layer it with a good solid kick and snare, like kind of more synthy sounding, and then just sort of get that all dialed in, just processed, and then resample it. Often I do in Ableton. So just kind of starting with that process, loading up just an instance of Addictive Drums. I'll just start kind of getting the sound dialed in as I like it here first. Let's just load up a sort of basic. Actually, I'll just go with good one. Just load up a sort of neutral kit like that. So you just have like kind of that kind of kick and snare. It sounds very live drummy, you know. I wouldn't really be able to use it yet. First of all, I'm just going to put in a simple pattern so that I'm just going to keep it looping while I'm editing it. So just it's going to start off just doing something very simple. There are all sort of different articulations here within Addictive Drums, which I really like. So it's the same snare but played sort of closer or farther away from the rim and whatever. You get some tighter hits and some sort of snappier, some sort of messier ones. So there's a lot of sort of to play with here. We'll just start with a kick and snare to begin. I'm gonna sort of go towards drum and bass for this, so let's just sort of set the tempo to 172. Alright, so now, first of all, here the kick, I'm just going to replace it. Let's put, like this one's got a lot of character, a bit more hollow sounding. So here at the top, we've got all of these sort of controls, pitch, envelope, that kind of stuff. And then here's sort of a run of different effects over the top. Some already sort of set up because I loaded a preset to start with. But I think it's, you know, that's all right in this case. The things I think are really important, first of all, you've got this little button here, no alts, which means that it doesn't sort of humanize your drum patterns, which is just a thing that can get a little bit frustrating. It can be great if you want to sort of modulate a real sort of funk drummer, but when we're doing sort of this more kind of electronic-y stuff, no alterations, it's just, what does it say, alternating. It's just better. It just makes it always the same sound, you know, consistent sound. For your snare as well, it's definitely important. Now, this is just the pitch envelope here. It sounds great. It's got like really good kind of, you know, range. Basically, it's just a pitch envelope. So just start a pitch sort of high, and then, you know, over a little bit of time, it will just drop down. So this is just a really, really dramatic version of it, but you know, I'll just get rid of the snares for a moment. So now you can just hear like a lot of attack sort of coming into it. So this is just the original sounds, a bit flat, but this just really punctuates the beginning and just makes sort of a really sort of real sounding kick, already a lot more electronic-y. So don't overdo it completely, but we'll just sort of be in this area, and just your pitch just might be good to be in some sort of area like this. Next, you know, volume envelope. It's definitely good to sort of tighten it up a little bit because you can hear this one hums a little bit at the end and it will muddy up the mix of the drums. But for now, we'll just sort of, we'll tweak this a little bit when we have a snare that we like so they sort of fit together nicely. You can see it has a little bit of compression and distortion on it, although it's not actually doing anything. And there's a lot of the mid EQ'd out because of this preset, so just bring it back. The tape is also not really doing a lot. One thing also, at the moment, it's got a reverb bus set up, so just turn that off, make it all a little bit more dry. Going to the snare, again, I just quickly select something different. I'm going to sort of make sure that it just plays the same sample again. I want to pitch this up a little bit. We can again use a tiny bit of pitch envelope. So there you go. Now on this one you can hear that it really sort of, you know, it's got a long tail and I want it definitely a bit tighter than that. Now I can also hear that in the kit it's actually got two samples, so I just have to quickly unlink them. It's linked a second snare to the first. Every time you trigger this one, it will trigger this one as well, and just makes it muddy. It can be good, but in this case I just want one snare. So just to get so that it kind of tight but still organic sounding drums is what I want, sort of the sound I like. You know, in terms of the compression here, it's all, you know, it's pretty straightforward. In this sort of preset it's all right. What's interesting here is that you can sort of play with the miking positions a little bit. You can sort of have more of a snare bus, so basically have more of the bottom miking as well, or the top one you just get like a drier snare from it. It sounds nice when you get it at the bottom, just have a little bit more of a snare, a little bit more of a crispiness at the top. You could just sort of increase that as well, but also when you have a snare bus, every time the kick plays, you have like a lot of over the top. And a little bit can be cool, but doesn't always need to be there. So in terms of kick and snare, I'll dial it in a little bit further, but that's sort of definitely sort of the rough start. And then some hats. So hats will be around here. Again, there are lots of different articulations in addictive drums, so you know it's all the same hat, but it'll be sort of very tight, or like a little bit looser, or even a little bit sort of almost open. And playing with that can just be really interesting, I find. So basically, not just play the same hat all the time. Now, if we, for instance, just sort of play with that a little bit. Now also purposely I'm doing slightly more open, slightly looser ones on the snares. And what I really like to do is just take them and delay them just a little bit, play them after. So that means that, especially when we get to the mixing and just really start pumping this up, the transient of the snare, that pop moment sort of comes through nice and clean, and then the hi-hat comes after that, and you get this nice drawn out kind of funky sounding snare. I find that to just really work well. So you can almost not hear it because of the sort of transient moment here being so loud already, that you think that they're actually played together, but sort of this just widens the snare a little bit and just find it to give nice results. I'm going to not do it so extreme as this because I want to tighten the hi-hats up a little bit. So again, we're going to go into the plugin, going to select the hi-hat. I think this hi-hat is probably fine. All the hi-hats sound pretty nice in this. I just want it a bit up. So I just pitch it up a little bit. I'm not going to play with the pitch envelope for this, but I'm definitely going to play with the envelope. So first of all, I'm just going to tighten it up a little bit. Also, I might take out a little bit of the attack. Just find it to be sort of a bit nice sometimes. Just makes it almost a bit like a shakery kind of effect. Then also what I didn't show before, but it has a good high cut and low cut at the end. And for this like a real sort of hi-hat, this has got quite a lot of low end to it. You know, from where the drumstick is hitting hitting the hi-hat, you know, you just sort of imagine there being some lower frequencies as well. So I just find, especially for just in the interest of sort of clean, techie beats, just kind of cutting the low end out of this. You can go. And also, you know, if you go even a little bit more, you get these really light kind of nice hats at the top. So there's sort of like a basic, sort of the organic part of my drums. Now, a little bit of processing that I would definitely apply to this. First of all, is for drums, I find very important, a little bit of alloy. So let's load up alloy. And I'm gonna, at the bottom you can see what alloy is. It's like an equalizer, then a transient, shaper, then exciter, compressor, another compressor, de-esser and a limiter. So it's a bit of a channel strip basically. But I'm gonna just use, you know, turn them on and off with the yellow button. I'm just gonna use the transient shaper. I'm gonna use that in multiband mode. And this is why this is my favorite transient shaper by a distance, because of this multiband kind of functionality. And it means I can enhance or de-enhance the transients of my drums for specific frequency areas. So now using this on this is just dry. You can have a look at where your cutoffs, the crossovers are set up, and it's 120 and 2K, and that's pretty decent actually. That works pretty well because it sort of separates your kick and your snare, and you know, sort of your top end snare and hi-hats. Now if I boost the attack transient, it'll just become more punchy basically, but I'm only doing it in the mid-range so that I don't get an over-the-top kind of toppy sort of end, which you might get sometimes when you are using normal full-range transient shapers too much. So I can go really over the top with this, sort of, if you listen to that. And you know, if I was doing it like that, now you have proper sort of high-end toppy, too much sort of tick. But because you can control that separately, I can really give sort of the lower, the body transient, like a real kick, and you just sort of feel it more in your stomach, without becoming sort of, you know, just that sort of ticky over the top kind of stuff. I might still use it a little bit. Also, great way to sort of tighten drums. It just does it really powerfully. We don't really want any of this low end, especially because I want to basically layer this up later with a proper heavy synthetic kick that will just match up this this kick here. And so I'm not going to change the transients of that too much. Although if you were to use this on like a full drum bass, this is definitely very powerful to make the kick more punchy or more taily sometimes if you don't have enough weight in it. But this is just, let's just dial it in a little bit more. Also later I'll put a little bit of limiting when I finally have those parts together, just to show you how I always overdo this a little bit, overemphasize drums so that I can limit them a bit more, that the limiter will control them and squeeze them sort of a little bit down so they sound a little bit less of this sort of extremely attenuated as they do now. One thing as well now, which I'll just apply generally, is just a bit of EQing. So I'm just going to use Pro Q, which is really nice and transparent EQ. Also, I'm just going to pull up on the master, just going to put just a quick analyzer. So I'm using Span, and I think you should definitely get Span. Span is free, and it's good to have a good analyzer. Always use the same one, learn it, and learn how things sort of, you know, kind of react to it. You know, just never obviously EQ with your eyes, but definitely use it as a tool to kind of, you know, fortify your decisions that you make by ear. So now, for instance, in Span you can see blue and a green line for left and right. And first what I can see is that my two lines are out of phase here. They're not on top of each other for the low end. For the low end it means just like rumble, it means like out of phase low end is just quieter. It can be a problem if you wanted to mix it to vinyl. So first thing I'm going to do on this EQ here is I'm going to switch it to mid side. I'm going to put a low cut, a very steep one, but I'm going to apply that only to the side information. So now if I just run it and just sort of look at this being out of phase, and then we do that to about just past the lower harmonic of the snare. And now the kick, the low parts of the kick and the snare, they are totally mono up to here, and then here all the character and the width is coming in where it doesn't take too much energy away and where you can really sort of hear that difference without it just being out of phase rumble. Just in terms of other EQing, I might give it a little bit of boost here for the full range. But for now, just keep it there, roughly. I mean, I could sort of like see that we were dipping a little bit here. We could definitely have a little bit more sort of weight roughly there, but we'll come back to that probably later, and we're just sort of trying to dial it all in with the finals. So then to layer this up, I'm gonna not go too deep. Like, I mean, what I like to do a lot is sort of use FM8 and create like an FM8 kick and an FM8 snare, but it doesn't always have to be so, you know, going in so deep and just from scratch sound design. I think a good thing to just get like a bit more sort of weighty, kind of electronic-y sounding drums would be to use DrumLab, which is a very simple Native Instruments plugin. I'm just gonna run it from complete control here, and it will then map out the samples just nicely over the keyboard and give me the light guides. Let me just load up a standard. So here we go. This is just the full machine. There we go. Just going to do this first, select by MIDI note. It means every time you play something, it will just jump to the different instrument and it will drive you crazy. So I'll just turn that off. Just quickly put in a little pattern, MIDI clip. There we are. Try this one. Alright, so we're just gonna have to tighten it up. So first of all, I'm just gonna get rid of them from my way. So I really want a heavy kind of synthy sounding kick. So just have a listen, you know, just a different. That's weighty. Just gonna tighten it up a bit. Also, again, I can hear there's some reverb on it, don't need that. Oh. Alright, so now this is just like a very sort of digitally kick, but we're just gonna try and match up the tuning with the organic sounding kick that we already have, and then use this sort of the weight that this has and the character that the other one has, and just try and marry them together. Let's just do it right away. So basically I'm just gonna move the loop that I just made there out of the way quickly. This is just a quick way for me to kind of tune stuff and I'll be able to hear it. I'm just gonna make, you know, this will drive your neighbors crazy, but just make a quick loop of both of them playing. So they just keep alternating like that. And then on the master I'm gonna open up a span, and you can see a little bit of a jump from here to here. So let's just see if I can dial that in. So just kind of go slightly off. Nicely modeled up harmonic, so it's not as clear as you can sometimes see it, but let's see if they match up. So they kind of match up fairly well now, I think. So we're gonna do something similar for the snare, so we might as well just have a quick look. Use D sharp for the snare. So let's just get the D sharp, and we will. So first, let's just tweak the sound for this snare a little bit. Sounds very real, like quite like that one. I think it'll work, but it's not quite a snare. I want something a bit more synthetic. Probably use something like that. Sounds a little bit cheap there, but we just wanted to sort of work underneath it. tighten it up just a little bit. Alright, so now let's have a quick little look at, I'm just going to turn that down, I think we're probably a little bit into that. So just have a look at the analyzer again. Now you can see like sort of a fundamental harmonic here and here. So we just want to match them up. That will be sort of the main pitches. So let's just see how close we can get. Can't quite get there. So just tune the whole thing up. We'll just have to tune the bass down a little bit later. I think, you know, obviously what I've done is I have pitched up the original addictive drums a lot. So I'm just gonna pitch down a little bit on the addictive drums so that we can get there, get to the same area. So just keep looking. You can see there's still a tiny little bit of sort of jumping. But we're just gonna go somewhere roughly in that area. Now, let's just go back to the original drums. Let's just layer up the patterns. Misclicking slightly. Oh. It was. Alright, so we've got like a bit of a matching layer now. Just go down a little bit on the master because we are in the reds. Now this will need a bit of processing. It'll probably be a very good idea to duplicate the channel now and just have the kicks and snares separately. So here we'll just have the kicks and here we'll just have the snares. Now, first of all, let's just focus on the kick. So, good. So now I'm just going to apply a little bit of EQ to it first. So we'll just have. I'll just bring out a little bit of the top end of it, I think. Just sort of scan to it a little bit. I think overall they sort of work quite well together right now, so I'm just not going to touch it that much more. And then the snare. Now I'm going to get an EQ on this. Let's just turn the EQ on here, so the analyzer. Now we could really focus on the lower harmonic and just kind of bring that out a lot. It just brings lots of weight into your drums. Obviously I've overdone it a little bit, but you can see 15 dB. You can see really sort of this kind of, you know, this frequency really brings out the weight in the drums, and the weight is what I want sort of from this layer. I'm going to apply a low cut because I can see there's stuff going on here and those are all frequencies you don't need. It's not that much really, to be honest. But. And then I'm sort of looking at the top end. We can probably bring some of that stuff in, like, you know, just attenuate the tops a little bit. Roughly there. Now on this I'm going to use an alloy again because I want this snare to be really pokey, really quite over the top, to be honest. I just want it to be functional. I'm going to use the multiband as we did before. Just going to tighten it up, but sort of, you can hear now we've got slight conflict of transients. Both of the transients are here. You can kind of hear that they're sort of fighting a little bit. I'm just not going to emphasize the top end of this one too much, but sort of keep it in this kind of rough area. Now this sort of is like kind of the rough layering of the drums done. It's still not, you know, super banging. I'm gonna basically bust them together, sort of. So I'm gonna basically all send them to the same channel and then put some more processing over the top of all of them. So if I take these three channels and instead of sending them to the master, I will send them to the new audio channel I just made, audio 4. Make sure that you enable the input. And now you can see everything just runs through here. By the way, one quick thing I forgot to do, just this plug preset in Addictive Drums has the hi-hat slightly to the side, and that's not what I want. So there we go, everything straight to the middle. Now, I mean, at this point, you can do some more EQing, a little bit of saturation and limiting. This is just really down to taste, I guess, or like what you're really looking for, whether you want to tighten it. One thing I think is interesting to show here is a little bit of saturation on it. I like to use Saturn for that, FabFilter Saturn. Really nice kind of, you can go quite over the top with this, but it's got cool, really nice, actually fairly powerful EQ, very simple sort of 4-band EQ, but I find that to be fairly useful very often. And also what's nice is, for instance, I'm on the tape mode, I'm kind of going a bit too far, but then you have a dry wet, so you can go a little bit too far, really bring out the sort of crispiness, and then just while you're doing that, just kind of dial it back a little bit and still have sort of the clean kind of full drums as you wanted them. Also, it's a little bit, it has dynamic setting, it's not just a distortion, it has sort of, you know, kind of limiting kind of capacity. And you can hear sort of these dynamics are actually really good for drums if you already want to kind of squeeze it a little bit there, you know, just tighten it up a lot, you can do, for instance. Or, you know, just really open it up, just depending for what kind of sound you're looking for. But I just find it's a really nice way to brighten stuff up a little bit. Also, because now we have these sort of different kicks and snares and drums, just kind of get that gelling, you know, from processing it together just a little bit, just so that it kind of glues together a little bit more. So some more processing on the drum bus I might put on. Again, I could go over the top, a little bit of alloy would not be wrong here. Again, you know, obviously we've already done it a lot there, but also, you know, just the final touches here. It's a lot of control, you can change the drums again, but also because of that sort of combined processing, I find they all come together just a little bit more again. So, and definitely after the saturation, you do lose some snap and stuff. You know, we can really sort of play with this, and like, you know, there are lots of different types of kind of drums you can go for, really. But you know, I'm not going to go too over the top, but definitely really worth playing around with. And I'll just put a little bit of limiting on it, because these drums need some limiting to really finally show you where we're at. So if I put a Pro L on it, basically go into the advanced and settings, and one great way to set it up for drums is punch is the best mode. With these overemphasized transients, I don't want to look ahead, because those sort of proper boop moments, they're going to disappear if you have the look ahead on, because it will just anticipate every loud transient. But it's really nice when it's actually too late for that and just sort of almost distorts a little bit, because it's just sort of attenuation, just works out. Just going to link the transients. It's not super important in this case because the stereo image is well controlled, but might as well do it. We're going to bring this down to, like, say 10 milliseconds and virtually no release, just a tiny bit. And this will just kind of have those transients. It will just be a little bit late on the transients, and they will still be emphasized, and then it will just, you can really squash it basically. So I'll show you. So this is it. It's already, I mean, the gain reduction is a lot. Might seem like a lot, but because we have a super reactive limiter, you know, this is really not that much, and it moves super fast. You can see it's not really for the transient moment. But now we can just, you know, you can just go nuts. It really depends on what kind of tune you want to make with it, but you can definitely go into this sort of territory. And you know, now sort of together with the addictive drums, now we finally have it sort of controlled. So the transients are controlled, the whole weight and the distribution of the drums is as I want it now, basically. And the limiting of it is definitely an important stage. So without the limiting, you just have too pokey. Sometimes for my tunes, when I send them off for mastering, they don't want the limiter on it. And all you hear is just like pop, 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 with like quiet music in the background. So the limiter really does a lot. It's just an essential part of it. This is all, the processing is set up so that after the limiter it will all sound natural but punchy. So now I think, you know, at this point I could start a tune with it, or I could just sort of save some processing power and also, you know, make it easier for myself and basically resample this and use it in a drum rack in Ableton and slice it basically to a drum rack. First of all, the resampling in Ableton is genius. You just start up an audio channel like that, and we will then hear the input. You set it for resampling, it just has a mode. Make sure you record enable it. And now it will sample anything to this channel that's playing. So, you know, you can just solo a bunch of channels and it will just record that, which is a really, really smart way of doing it. You don't have to route buses or, you know, obviously I could just hit record on this channel in this instance, but if you might have something a bit more elaborate, or you're going, you know, you want to just do a quick recording to make an edit of a part of your tune and you only want a few things, then you don't have to bounce it out. You just solo those things, set it to resampling here, and then, you know, you can just sort of see. So there you go, just have the beat instantly. I'm just gonna have no input now, so let's make sure it's there. Now let's have a listen to this. So basically I don't think we've got the deprocessing on it now, so let's just actually record it here anyway. So we're gonna record it to this channel. Yeah, so basically the bus was not included in that. Now let's move this one down. Good, so now we have our fully loud processed drums here. Now the slicing, the automatic slicing in Ableton is really cool. So it just, first of all, because it's Ableton, it will warp your audio and it will detect all of your transient slices, you know. So you can see here it's already automatically detected them all. They're all very much on point, but you could edit them a little bit if you felt it necessary, if you might make something quite loose. But the main sort of really good bit about Ableton this moment is that you can just resample it to sort of the drum rack. Now the drum rack is just like kind of it's not really an instrument. It's more like you know, like a controller in which you can load instruments and you can make your own slicing presets for it, which I think is another thing that people know too well. So for instance, if I go here, I right click and I go slice the MIDI, then at this point it asks me what kind, you know, how it slices to transient, all those markers. You could do, you know, 2 straight beats, for instance, if you wanted that. But also, then it has a preset. Well, there's a bunch of sort of presets that it comes with, but none of them I find are very sort of tuned to drum needs somehow. So you can make your own. And to make your own, we'll just quickly make our own one, and then we'll use it on this. So I'm gonna just set up the form for how I want this to be sliced. So first of all, I'm just gonna start here, MIDI track, and I'm gonna go to instruments, and there I'm gonna load up a drum rack. So here we go. It's just literally sort of an MPC or, you know, Machine Studio style sort of pad control, with then for every pad it has a slot for, you know, something to be loaded up into. It can be synthesizers or whatever. You can go really versatile with this. But if you just keep it simple for this, we're gonna load a sampler. I'm just gonna throw it in here for the shape. So now this has, like, this pad here has a sampler on it. And again, I'm not gonna load anything into it. I'm just building the structure of it so that it can be applied to every slice here. And what's important to be doing now is to set up your macro controls, because that's really useful when you have, like, you know, 16 slices later on. So first of all, let's open up the macros. So we have 8 assignable controls here, and we just set them up to stuff that we like. So for instance, I think, you know, for drums, we're gonna have to have ADSR envelopes. So, or let's apply them to the top. So here I'm gonna go to the attack from the envelope, just the amp envelope. I'm gonna go map to macro 1. Then macro 2 will be decay, onwards for sustain, and for release. So now you can see we have that here. So that those are, like, you know, very useful things. Now, one thing that there's not a proper slicing preset for is to have pitch, one of the most important bits. So just go into control, and we have here the transposition. So we will map that to macro 5. Also, you can see for some reason the defaults here, the default settings will be what it loads up later. So we'll just put sort of the drums fully open, like that, and we will put transpose to 0. Not sure why when you map this for the first time it would assume that you might want -48 default, but it does it that way. You know, you could then assign, for instance, some filter parameters. So for instance, let's just assign to 7 and 8 the resonance, and, you know, we're gonna sort of default set it to this. we have now a low-pass filter that's fully open without any resonance. I mean, I might be, for instance, inclined to assign the filter type to this remaining macro, but you know, it's up to you. For the time being, I'm gonna go with this. So I'm gonna save this, and it comes up there. Now I'll just call it like a slice preset. And to make this available for sort of selecting, just in the user library, you're gonna go to defaults, and it will open, and then slicing, and just drop it in there basically. So now if we go to, you can delete that. If we go to slice the new MIDI track, transient, and we're gonna go to slice preset. It's available here now. We go OK, and we come out with a sliced rack. So now you can see it's just sort of made for every hit of the drums here. It's made, you know, corresponding note. It has the MIDI, and on the channel we can just see we have like every channel has all of those parameters that we have assigned. So let's see why it is. First of all, just, you know, you can see that this one is outside of the too many different programs. Right. So first, all right. So let's just tighten this up. And it's coming out a little bit unnatural. Why is that? Yeah, so it's basically, it's cut the transients a little bit unnatural. Let's just use this preset, size dynamic, do slice wave. Alrighty. Oopsie. There you go. So now let's go again. The first one's falling slightly outside, and then we've got sort of more or less. It's obviously a little bit tighter, but this is more or less the same setup. So we've got like our the envelope here. Also especially important, the pitch now on the left. Got the filter if we want to apply that. But most importantly, sort of now this whole sort of drum break is fully controllable. So basically, like one thing I still want to definitely talk about is how sharp and tight the envelopes are on the simpler and with this setup in Ableton. I mean, I work in Logic and Cubase as well quite a lot, but I've never come across envelopes that are so punchy as this. And it's very useful for drums especially, because let's say if we set up our drum slightly pitched up, nice and short, whatever, a bit longer. So kind of useful like this, but if we've already made quite punchy drums to begin with here, but if we were to do, if we thought that we didn't have enough punch in the drums, I just find it really useful just to duplicate the channel, and then in the second one we have the same settings, but we just got super short and just get almost clicks, as you can hear now. And this is just over the top as sort of an attenuation layer. Just find that you can really hear sort of how you go from this. Obviously I'm doing this with very punchy drums, so this is slightly overkill, and you can really, obviously now we have like a lot of sort of this poppy attenuation, but if we now very quickly were to just get rid of all of them, we just sort of have even more transient definition right away. We can just, so we're just sort of layering that over the top, and I find that a really useful way to very quickly sort of boost your transients, just chuck them straight in. So yeah, that's about the full process of kind of matching up and layering drums and then resampling and slicing them back into Ableton. So hope you guys enjoyed that, the drums. I'm going to talk about bass a little bit now, but if you want to see that, you're going to have to get the latest issue of Computer Music. So there we go, bass lines.